One of the most common questions that Chels and I get asked is, how do you create a successful women's program? In this video, we're going to discuss the topic, look at how we structure our academy and create an environment that anybody feels comfortable coming in to try our classes and becoming a member. Now you might be wondering, Tom, you're a bloke, what do you know about what women are looking for? And that's a great question. And that's why I'm deferring to Chelsea's knowledge on this subject, as she helped me prepare for this video. But there's a very specific reason that I'm presenting it rather than her, and we'll talk about that in a minute. To give you some insight into our school, our women's program grew by about 43% last year, and we currently have around 30% of our student population being female. Last week in an advanced class, we had 23 people in one of them, and 13 of those were women. In our kids class on the same night, we had 13 kids in, and 12 of those were female. And it's not some unique, unusual experience for us. It happens regularly. We regularly have large numbers of women in our regular classes. When you compare that to the national average, according to the UK BJJA, 5 to 10% of most academies are women. So we must be doing something right. Now, before we dive into the meat of the topic, there is an incredibly important question you should ask yourself about growing a women's program. Why? Why do you want more women to train at your school? What makes them different than any other person starting your school? Is it because you feel you should? Or is it because you feel that they bring some value to your academy that you don't currently have? Now, if it's just some kind of tick box exercise where you feel that you should have a women's program and that women should train for some reason, then you're probably never going to grow a successful women's program. It's not how it works. We don't target women specifically. Instead, we target the type of people that isn't exclusionary, and thus we have a lot of women. And we create an environment where anybody can thrive, which is the key to all of this. And that brings us to women's only classes. Now, women's only classes don't attract women who stay. Jiu-Jitsu is a very heavily male-dominated sport, as we just talked about it. And once women outgrow those women's only classes, because they will, the reasons that they didn't join your main program still exist. They haven't acclimatized to the culture of your gym. And when they have to transition over, that fear, that trepidation that attracted them to those women classes in the first place will stop them transitioning into your main program. Now, there is a couple of exceptions to this. The main one being if you're in, for example, I have a friend who's in a very heavily populated Muslim area, and as a result, women can only train with women. He's never met this portion of his student population, but that's a very different experience than what most people do with women's classes. So in terms of who you want to attract, there is no one person, no one woman who you're going to attract to train. And it's exactly the same as with guys. There is no one type of guy who's going to want to come to your classes. They're going to come because they want to get fit, because they want to learn some self-defense. Maybe they're looking for a hobby, for a pastime. It doesn't matter whether they're male or female, young or old. It's going to be some of those different reasons. And they're the only kind of singular unifying feature across any of these kind of categories is the willingness to get stuck into your classes. That's what's going to mean that they're going to stay and train and enjoy it long term. If they're down for a scrap and they feel comfortable being in an environment and being themselves, they will stick around and they'll have an amazing time and they'll be a valuable part of your academy. As I said, there might be the odd exception for heavily Muslim populated areas, but you'll know that if you're in that area, and you can accommodate that accordingly. The way that we start to attract people is through representation. And this comes back to the reason that I'm presenting this video. The more than likely you are a male instructor if you're watching this. Okay, that is because the sport is mostly men. And so it will be more impactful coming from me rather than Chels talking about it. People tend to look for people who look like themselves when they're trying to do things. So if your social media is just full of guys training who look like meatheads, it's probably what's going to happen in your academy, even if you want to create something else. You need representation across the board. You want to build your women's program, have representation of women. You want to build your kids program, have representation of kids. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to have that representation within your school. And women aren't some kind of special snowflakes. Just like men, just like everybody else, some are going to like jiu-jitsu and some won't. And regardless, we want to create that environment that supports everybody who likes jiu-jitsu. And that brings us on to creating an inclusive environment. The gym culture is one of the most common problems that women, but really everybody faces. And that can mean all kinds of different things on a spectrum, from the abusive cultist gyms to the well-meaning training partners who just don't understand how to work with everybody. So there is a few critical things that you can do to promote an inclusive training environment. And these are things that everybody will thank you for, regardless of who they are. The first thing is you have to teach your students not to be absolute twits. Okay, that is crucial. You shouldn't let your students be doing dangerous things, acting inappropriately, any of that kind of stuff. It's not good for the health of your school. And if you do find people who are idiots or they're just acting like creeps and weirdos towards people, you got to ban them from training. It's perfectly fine. Not everybody is right for your school, and that's okay. The next thing that we want to do is always make sure that we're maintaining a clean training environment. Again, this shouldn't be something I need to say, but your mat should be cleaned regularly. Your gym shouldn't smell of feet. It's crucial not only for like attracting women, but also for the health of your student population. Like jiu-jitsu, it's a close contact sport. Germs, bugs, bacteria get passed back and forth. You need to be on top of your cleaning. So that means cleaning your mats regularly, making sure that people, when they're off the mat, wear shoes, making sure that you encourage good hygiene habits. So your people's gis have to be watched. You can't train in the morning and be like, I'm just going to air dry my gi, that'll be fine, and then train in that same gi in the evening. It needs to be washed regularly. Same if gis get torn. It's super important that you provide this kind of stuff. The next thing is uniforms make people feel comfortable. Like, a lot of people are like, why do you have white uniforms? It's because one simple reason: it makes people feel comfortable. Everybody can wear that uniform and look like they're wearing pajamas, which is fine. But any new person who comes in, any woman, anybody who's shy, anybody who's not confident, immediately can blend in with the background. Okay, same with our no-gi uniform. Like, the reason that we have that no-gi uniform is to make people feel comfortable. Okay, I don't know about you, but I never want to train with some dude who's just wearing hot pants and a shirt and then do no-gi with them. That is just gross, man. I don't want to feel their sweaty chest in my face. Okay, make people feel comfortable. Okay, so that's why we have a uniform for everybody and for every class. Same, like simple white gis, black uniform for no-gis. You can't have any like nonsense logos or stuff that could upset people. We just don't want that. We want to create an inclusive environment after all. The next thing is you need to make sure, if you want to attract women or whoever, have facilities for them. I know a school that they were like, yeah, we've got to get more women, but they didn't even have a women's changing room. They got the women to change in like the cleaning cupboard. Like, that is not an inclusive environment. You need to provide facilities for everybody. And if you only have one changing room or one bathroom, make it unisex so that anybody can use it, and make it clean as well. The next thing is, don't make your female students the caretakers of like new people who come in, new women who come in, kids, adolescents, whatever. They are there to train. Just like anybody else. You wouldn't do this to like a small guy or a guy, so don't do it to women. They're not there to be the mothers of new students. They're there to train, okay? And they want to train. They want to train hard most of the time if they're in your program. So give them that outlet. And the same, don't make them always train with the same woman as well. Like, if you have two female students, doesn't mean that they should always be training together, because they're probably not appropriate training like size for each other. Same reason that you wouldn't have like a 100-kilo guy and a 60-kilo guy always working together. It does not make sense. Size, skill, training intensity, these things matter more than the gender does in most experience. Okay, and like I said right at the start of this, when you create this kind of environment, everybody thrives. Not just women. It's about being inclusive to everybody and supporting them in their jiu-jitsu journey. Okay, so that's kind of my ranty bit over. But in final thoughts, like attracting women into like a heavily male-dominated sport like jiu-jitsu, it's a slow process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's definitely worth doing. And the more you start to create this kind of inclusive environment, the more your students will thank you, and the more likely that you are going to be able to attract women to your classes. Okay, for us, we had a tipping point of 4 women. It took 4 women training regularly before our program just expanded, before people got comfortable feeling like they were okay to come in. Okay, and regardless, like I said a few moments ago, regardless of whether you get tons of women joining your program, creating an inclusive, safe training environment benefits everybody. Okay, so hopefully all that made sense. Hopefully it didn't come across as too much of a rant, but it's a really important topic to share with you. So if you need a little bit of extra help creating your training environment and even your marketing, whatever it is, attracting more students to your schools, send me a message, tom@escapologybjj.com, and let's talk.